album review time, gentlemen.
It could have made an effort. Gentlemen.
That was his effort. Did you not see his face?
He said, well.
This is like so concentrated. Well.
Here we go. Album review time, gentlemen. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Norwegian progressive death metal band Hypermass. The band's new album, Empyrean, will be released on June 3rd.
If Dave was in this band, it'd be called Sedate Mass. That's his review style tonight for some reason. No energy.
Zero. Already on holiday, Duncan. Hypermass was born from the ashes of two different bands from two different genres. Once the old band started to have multiple lineup switch-ups, the long-time acquaintances thought it would be the best to coalesce into one strong entity.
I believe the scientific term for that is a hypermass, Dave.
Hypermass.
I see if you say something in that tone that you've been using all along throughout this recording, it sounds believable, even though I've just made that up.
Yeah, it does. Having only released one EP in 2015, this debut album has been years in the making. The album was recorded and produced with John Torrey Dombu at Scarp Studios, and then mixed by Adam Nolly Getgood and mastered by Rogue Planet Mastering. So, Jim,
that explains a lot of how it
sounds. They literally got a planet to master this.
Yes,
that's quite clever. I like it.
Hypermass, completely new on me. We checked out one of their tracks last week and decided, yes, I think this would be something we would like to discuss. And
make us sound a lot more like intelligent than the selection process actually is. The selection process is usually this. The track goes on, we hear a couple of seconds, and as soon as one of us goes, oh fuck, we're like, yeah, we're doing that review. Dave has us like sitting down at the end like it's a book club. I mean, the second movement was the part that really captivated me. I think that the band themselves were translating the message of opening new doors to new worlds and experiences. Shall we all review it next week?
Can I hold you there, Duncan? Sorry, can I hold you there? I need to ask Jeeves to get me some more creme de menthe.
What would I say about this album? This is, for a debut album, this is very well accomplished.
Just a little bit. I did not know for one second this was a fucking debut. I just thought this was a band I'd never heard of.
Would never have guessed. This is very well put together. The playing is super tight. Ideas are very well formulated. I really love the kind of the back and forth between the light and shade on this. Like Hivemind, like constantly kind of weaves between these like big, like progressive grooves with like these kind of undertones of death metal, but the lead work and the tails of the riffs are very kind of uplifting. It's like a mix of like a Soilwork meets Gojira with a bit of like Opeth or something thrown in there. Very groove heavy, very fluid, and very intricate in the riffing, but it's quite hooky as well at the same time. Riffs are very infectious. They've all almost got this kind of like melodeath kind of streak to them that gives them a bit of a catchiness. Like it has a bit of like almost like a bit of like the haunted or feared in there as well. Plenty of variation going on in the tracks, going from these like big progressive grooves to something more kind of death metal laden. Plenty of blasts and guttural vocals. Some really cool use of atmosphere on tracks to make them sound a bit bigger as well. The tracks sound huge. The groove on tracks like the Degenerate Strain will have you just like head banging along without a doubt. But they'll quite happily take it somewhere more progressive on like Null and Void, where the bass comes out a bit more expressive. Love the rhythms on To Dissect and Serve, which are very Gojira, but the kind of atmospheric lead work was also really cool alongside that heaviness. Vocally, this guy's got a really cool tone.
It reminds me of someone. Do you know who it reminds me of?
Oh, no.
Because I had to Google this like ASAP because I would not put this past this motherfucker to be in a project and not tell us about it when he was on the fucking show. Jacob.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Jacob, like not first 3 albums, Hate Sphere, but certainly kind of Sickness Within, maybe even towards like early stuff with The Candidate.
Mm-hmm.
His tone, like he can hit that really deep, like that one that Jacob seems to just be able to hit, like for like as if it's fucking nothing. His maybe his range isn't as high, but his mid range, that kind of cross between almost like thrash, like intensity with that kind of death metal guttural behind it. That's what it reminded me of, and I genuinely for a minute was like, motherfucker, like, on an album, and not because he said he was busy and he was doing things, and I would not put like past him at all just to be in there. But that's what reminded me. I loved the vocals on this. I think the vocalist is the most like suited person to this band ever.
Yeah, whether it's like it's got a really cool guttural tone or the mid range is really cool, his delivery is spot on. His name's Robert Carlson. I could hear
AKA like Jacob Riddle, right?
He kind of reminded me of like a mix between like the guy who does the kind of gutturals and Scar Symmetry, or like Josh Middleton from Sylosis or something like that. It's a really cool blend. But he's also not afraid to throw in some like tonal melody into the mix as well. Like that chorus on the Degenerate Strain is really cool. Production's also really solid in this as well, really punchy, but catches all the little melodic licks in the guitars, and the background synths as really well. Guitars sound nice and meaty, so nothing really to complain about there for me. My only kind of like very small criticism was that I felt like it did kind of like start to run out a little bit of steam towards the end. The last
I have comments on that. So.
Yeah, all right. The last two tracks were good, but I felt like I'd kind of heard all the ideas by that point. And the last two tracks were a little bit more forgettable, but aside from that, I really enjoyed this one from Hypermass. I think if this is how they sound on their first album, then there's definitely bigger things to come from them in the future, because this is really good for a debut. What about you guys? Duncan, what do you think?
A lot of what you've just said is pertinent to what I would say. I'll just get my gripe out the way.
Okay.
a big glaring gripe. First track. Cool as fuck synths, bit of electro, bit of industrial. Duncan was fucking rock hard.
Right.
Couldn't wait to hear it on the rest of the album, and then it doesn't come in until Mother Dome, which is the final song, where they bring it back, and I heard it and I was like, that there should be more of this on this album. That's the thing. That's the bit where you kind of feel like what you were saying. You get to a point where you feel like you've heard everything. By about the Equalizer, funnily enough, which is not the Edward Woodward TV show from the 80s, sadly. One of my favourite intros to a TV show ever. Used to terrify the fuck out of me. Who's in that subway and why is he trying to stalk that woman? Hurry up, Edward Woodward, and save her. But the like Mother Dome and The Constant, the two of those tracks have really, really, really good use of synths. And electronic sims, and the mix is fucking perfect, and I was like, this is going to be really cool. And then for whatever reason they come back and use some of those synth sims, but nowhere near as interesting as what they did on those the opening and closing track, and that to me is a miss. Like, that to me is a big miss, because that's something that this genre doesn't do a lot of like that, and they can do it well. It kind of almost feels, even though they're bookending it, so at least they bookend it. I've said many times before, I don't like ideas being introduced on introductions which are just not going to be on the album. Like, unless it's a movie quote or something. Like, if you go for something that sounds like very different to the rest, what is that intro introducing you to? It'd be like going to watch a movie, right? And you're sitting down to watch said movie, and like the first 5 minutes before the credits come up, and it's like The Hangover, and then after the credits you're watching a Serbian film. Like, the two movies are so like tonally disparate, they don't match. And that's it's a pet peeve of mine. I know a lot of people probably, well, Dave didn't mind it. A lot of people don't mind it, but to me it's like you clearly can do that, because you do it later on. It clearly sounds bitching, and you've put a lot of time into crafting that intro. Do more of that. Out with that, though, those two songs aside, this is fucking great. Like, guitar-wise, the playing is so fucking awesome. I love the production. There's a rawness to this.
Yeah.
There's actually like an older vibe to the sound overall, in a way that I really, really enjoyed. I don't know if it's because we've been listening to a lot of super polished stuff recently, that stuff that's just recorded normally seems old. But yeah, that worked for me. Vocally, I love this guy's tone. I think this guy is like just like everything that I want in that style of vocals.
Yeah.
But the playing is of such a high level, such a high caliber, and like you were saying, Dave, I think they're at their most interesting when they start bringing in those elements of kind of progressive melody, and they weave them in, and they're never there long. And I think that's perfect to bring them in to accentuate the part they're doing, and then they go back to basics, back to what they're doing really, really well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great release. I just personally, my own taste, they can do the electronic stuff. It sounds bitchin' when it's in there, and I would have liked maybe 2 or 3 more songs in there which explored a bit more of that aspect, because that's just something you don't hear a lot of in this genre, and they do it really fucking well. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. I would enjoy that more with a little bit more electro.
Excellent.
Kyle.
What was that? It's like you stubbed your toe ever so slightly, and it's my fault.
What did you think?
My favorite part of this was on the degenerate strain. About 4 minutes into a 5-minute song, suddenly a heavy metal solo. It just starts shredding away, and the tempo picks up. I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? I love it. The rest of the song is not the same style, but it works so well. It works really well. It's produced by Adam Nolly Getgood, of which I have a signed T-shirt that says Nolly from his first band Red Seas Fire. So I've been following his career quite well. He has a very specific sort of sound in production, and there's a lot of it on here, but generally it's a lot cleaner and a lot more perfect, if you know what I mean. But there's a bit of an edge to this, which I appreciate, because you know me, I don't like things to be perfectly in metal because it just doesn't suit that very well. But it's definitely in here a bit, and I think it suits this sound because they've got a very sort of like what's the word, surgical style to their riffs and stuff. It's very tight, very sort of, you have to play, you can't play this stuff sloppy. They've been playing it very well. It doesn't sound edited too much, actually. It sounds like they have practiced and learned and actually played these things this well, which is fantastic to hear. I mean, my producer ears aren't as good as Nolly's, not by a long shot, but I couldn't hear too much like fuckery. There's a bit of it on the drums, but I mean, welcome to 2022, you know. Plus, Adam, he has his own drum library like out for sale, so I'm sure he probably used a bit of that on there. But they sound good. They don't sound fake. They don't sound like too plasticky and stuff. So they sound good. But every now and then you can like hear a couple that are about the same. They've been reinforced. It's fine. But no, I had a really good time with this album. But I will agree that it did kind of lose steam towards the end, and I was like, okay, we've heard it now. Are you going to do something more? Are you going to bring those electronic elements back? Because halfway through the album, I was like, just the same as Duncan, like, this was great. Where the fuck is it? Bring it back. And then
that
never did.
opening song, by the way, I can't express how giddy I was bouncing in my seat.
The first thing I thought was, this is a Duncan album.
I was literally thinking, Dave is fucked up here. This has somehow went through the vetting process of making Duncan happy, which we know Dave like deliberately vets out in any album he hands over. It's like, will this make Duncan happy? Yes. Will I bin it? Yes. Yeah,
but I never brought it back until the last song. But I do like the last song because there's a lot of bass on its own.
Yeah, it's a great fucking name. In fact,
really.
The names of all the songs are fucking amazing.
But yeah, no, they say in their thing they tried to mix like all of the genres of metal and mix them into one, which I thought was pretentious as fuck when I read it. I'm not gonna lie. They were just like, oh, we can't be put into any subgenre. We're too fucking good for that. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, come on. But then I listened to it, I was like, actually, you kind of have done that.
They did a lot, yeah. And that might not be everything, but one would argue that they picked the better elements.
Yeah. There's like tinges of black metal in here on some of the blast beat sections in the guitars, and there's like bits of hardcore and death grind and fucking everything. You just pick it out from tiny little parts. And then there's this little bit in Null and Void where they're just like, we're gonna have a progressive solo now. But they don't just slap things together like we've heard stuff bands do before and it just suck. They've really, really, like, everything is very measured that they've put together. It's like nothing outstays its welcome, nothing's overdone, some things aren't done enough, electronics. So it doesn't get boring, like, in that sense, but by the time you get to, like, track, I don't know, Distant, Behind the Leviathan, it's like, Okay, let's switch it up a bit, just a little tiny bit. But I mean, for a first release, it's very, very, very strong. So I mean, there's not really much bad you can say. And considering it is a first release that after just one EP, to have such small gripes is a huge achievement, to be honest.
Yeah.
And to have someone like Nolly behind the mixing board as well, because I'm sure he can take his pick of projects. He's so very well known and super busy. So to have him on it is an achievement as well. So well done to these guys, especially from Trondheim, which is the smallest town.
Nice. So ratings wise for Empyrean by Hypermass, what we're thinking score wise. I thoroughly enjoyed this. That was a really strong debut from a band that I'd never heard of. My only kind of criticism was just towards the end, it kind of started to kind of run out a little bit of steam. But that aside, still thoroughly enjoyed this. I would go 4 out of 5 on this album. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Feeling we're all going to be syncing up quite a lot tonight. 4, yeah. Ooh. I think there's like this band have immense potential. Like that's the thing that came out of this at the end of the listen for me is like this, you know, this band are like it's just a mastery of what they're doing. I think given more time now and more focus, especially if you tell me that, you know, this is the album one, it's only going to get stronger. And yeah, my only criticism and what knocks it down a 0.5 from being a 4.5 is you can clearly do really interesting like electronic stuff. Don't be afraid to use more of that in your music. I think you do it really, really, really well. It's very difficult to marry those two things together and make them sound like they should be there. And on both the tracks, A Constant and Mother Dome, you make it sound effortless. So more of that would get you more from me. 4.
Nice. And Kyle?
Exactly the same, 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, nice.
There we go.
So Hypermass Empyrean drops on June 3rd. Check them out. There'll be links below on YouTube to their Facebook, to the Bandcamp and stuff. Let us know what you think. And that's the review. Let us know what you think of the new album when it drops.